The history of critical thinking goes back through history to the best thinking that's ever been done about the human mind. And there are many glimmers of examples of this going back to Socrates and, of course, beyond. But with Socrates, we begin to get a systematic attempt to understand reasoning and how to assess reasoning. So Socrates is explicitly asking questions that then we begin to answer moving forward in history. And certainly coming into the 1970s, we begin to see the concept of critical thinking as a term, the term critical thinking, emerge on the international stage moving forward. Critical thinking has had a rough time. It's had difficulty finding a place in the world that we have developed as humans. It emerges fundamentally, the concept of critical thinking, from the field of philosophy, but not entirely, because any field can contribute to our understanding of the human mind. So the concept of critical thinking that we need is one that is a general concept, one that is based in natural languages, one that is accessible to all humans who reason, and that we can bring into our classrooms easily at all levels, that we can bring into our work at all levels, and that we can bring into our home life at all levels. So when we emerge out of the 1970s, we begin to see this movement, small movement towards critical thinking. And in 1981, we established the first conference on critical thinking at the then Center for Critical Thinking, which Richard Paul established to advance fair-minded critical thinking across education and throughout society. And he did this at Sonoma State University in Northern California. Our organization is a 501c3 nonprofit organization located in California, now the Foundation for Critical Thinking, which is a sister to the Center for Critical Thinking. We moved into the 1980s with multiple scholars beginning to come together and also to create and develop beginning definitions of critical thinking or advancing those definitions, developing those definitions. And what we see in the 1980s and moving in the 1990s is a hope that critical thinking will find its own home in academia. But in fact, it has not found its own home in academia. It is still mainly controlled by philosophy. And that means that it's mainly still focused on informal logic and argumentation theory and the old theories that we've had for hundreds of years in some cases, that we've gone far beyond with a rich, explicit conception of critical thinking accessible to everyone based in natural languages. And this is what we need. So our goal at the Foundation for Critical Thinking has always been to answer the question, what is involved in reasoning? How do we assess reasoning properly? What standards should we use? What characteristics are we trying to develop as thinkers? In other words, what traits of mind or dispositions do we want to cultivate in ourselves as we work toward becoming more fair-minded critical thinkers? So what I'm saying is that in this history of critical thinking, we have great promise. We have developed theories that, if taken seriously, could transform human societies. When Richard Paul established the Center and then Foundation for Critical Thinking, he envisioned a world in which first we would see critical thinking communities, centers popping up across the country and then across the world. This has not been achieved. there have been and are many forces working against the cultivation of fair-minded critical societies. Critical thinking has not emerged as its own bona fide field of studies. Therefore, it is still, as I've said, controlled by philosophy and by other academicians who are teaching critical thinking and doing what they can. But this is not good enough. What we need is an explicit, fair-minded conception of critical thinking that we can foster across human societies, across businesses, across education, in every part of human life. We've got to have a conception of critical thinking that all of us can benefit from and that can advance the human species more generally and help us face and deal with, in an effective way, all of the problems that press upon us as humans. We have not established those centers we had hoped to see established. We have not seen the international community or the national community embrace critical thinking in any kind of substantive way. But we do have beginnings, and all of us are able to make some advancements using our critical thinking within our circles of influence.